most of the audience will probably be U.S.-based folks, and some might be familiar with the Canadian immigration system. It's difficult to really bring up U.S. employment-based immigration without bringing up Canada because it's become such an important part of the system here. But I was hoping you could unpack just sort of the political breakdown on immigration in Canada, but in particular employment-based immigration. In the U.S., it's fairly known that there's a couple of Democrats, a couple of Republicans who are very vocally outspoken about the need to bring in talent from overseas. But it's very partisan for the most part in the overall conversation of immigration. In Canada, I've heard a few interviews with the Conservative leader there. Seems like for the most part, he's on board with increasing, the number of immigrants that Canada brings in. And meanwhile, the Trudeau government is doing the same thing. So could you unpack the landscape politically in Canada when it comes to immigration?
Yeah, of course. And I think you've already, done a great summary there. Like I would say, by and large, the attitude towards immigration in Canada is that immigration and newcomers are a force for good, and that they contribute to the country both economically and culturally and in all aspects. And that has generally led to a sentiment where immigration numbers have increased in Canada over time, regardless of political party that's been in charge. And normally when we do webinars, we actually have a chart that kind of shows first that if you were to go back 25, 30 years, you'd see a steady increase in just the number of immigrants and newcomers coming to Canada. And then if you were to overlay that with like parties in charge, even as the parties have changed, you would see that those numbers have continued to rise. And we'll get into some of this later, but there is survey data that also shows that Canadians look at immigration as being positive, which helps kind of take that off the table for being a political lightning rod of any kind. And part of this is just because, similar to the U.S., Canada has combined immigration plans, right? So if you look at it, there's economic migrants, there's family reunification, and then there's cases like refugees or those facing different global crises. If you look at this split in Canada of what that is, the economic portion is always the largest bucket. So the number one source of immigrants and newcomers is economic migrants. It's typically 60% or higher of the people that are coming in. And so when people think about immigration and when they think about people coming to the country, they generally, the first thought is they work, they're helping the GDP, they're helping to grow the economy, they're contributing to the country. And that's quite different than the numbers in the US, where the number of economic migrants is 20% or less. So it's a lot more family reunification, diversity visa lottery, and other places where the sentiment towards immigration is just not that strong, which is why the political will, even on either side, is actually to either keep the status quo or reduce immigration, versus in Canada, where it's actually quite strong to increase immigration. And so that's something that we've seen regardless of political lines, just because even if you were to watch Canadian debates when where there's a political election, the question is not should we have immigration? It's generally just how much and some of the more specific nuances around it. But the answer to immigration has always generally been yes.
Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to Immigration and Mobility Decoded. If you watched this video on YouTube and you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the Envoy Global YouTube channel for more content like this. Otherwise, please follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks everyone.